The Studio is a comedy series from Apple TV that stars Seth Rogen as the head of a studio in Hollywood. Seth plays Matt Remick, the new head of Continental Studios, who grapples with the age-old Hollywood dilemma of balancing artistic integrity with box office demands. Whilst the character Matt Remick and Continental Studios are not real, the show is based on some very real themes. The struggles of Hollywood studios are satirised in the show, and I want to explore today how close the events that happen in the show are to real life. How often do insane things like this happen in the film industry? How real is the studio? The Studio started airing this spring and finished just recently, and was largely well received. Real celebrity filmmakers feature in the series as themselves, including famous actors, directors, film critics, and pretty much anyone in the industry. They each play a heightened version of themselves in order to move the plot along, but it isn't far from the truth that working with talent is not easy. I thought it was super interesting that Olivia Wilde played a controlling, narcissistic version of herself, given that her recent directorial role on Don't Worry Darling had a horrendous series of scandals that were widely reported and ridiculed, including her bitching about Florence Pugh in a video and potentially having an affair with her co-star. The show plays into what we know about the film world in real life. So, for example, in one episode, Matt has to approach Martin Scorsese about filming a new project, and Martin Scorsese's mere presence is overwhelming for Matt. As it would be for anyone, Scorsese has cultivated a presence of an auteur. He's so opposed to mainstream film that he considers them more like roller coasters than like art. And in the show, Matt is so hyper aware of this personality that he can't say no to Scorsese. It's that blending of the real with the fictional that makes you wonder if this is based on truth. And it's not necessarily that it's based on a real story, it's that it's based on how Hollywood really works. It's not the first piece of media to peek behind the curtain at movie production, and it's not the first to be critical of it either. But the show, very interestingly, doesn't position a clear antagonist. It has always been in vogue to blame producers and exec producers for just making the same films over and over and never taking creative risks. So the studio drops us into a timeline where an earnest producer who's always wanted to take the reins of the studio and steer it back towards making art, is forced to continue making safe, CGI-heavy blockbusters. Immediately we understand that even the world's biggest cinephile, with a commitment to bringing artistry back to the film industry, can't disrupt a decades-long system. The show uses Barbie as an example of a film that's a blockbusting profit maker and an auteur work of art. And in real life, that film did cross the boundaries of entertainment and art. Matt is chasing that same dynamic, not because he believes that it is the way that he wants to tell stories, but it's because it's the only way he can see any form of artistry being allowed at Continental Studios. Even though he's the studio head, it shows us that, in fact, the person that we think has all the power is still beholden to a CEO who is profit-driven, and the responsibility of keeping the company alive. Everyone below him is employed because of the decisions that he makes. If he's the guy that sinks the ship of the powerhouse that is Continental, he'll always be known as that. He'll never be the guy who brought creativity back into cinema. He'll be the guy that couldn't make a profit and made Continental fail. Matt learns immediately that the artistic route is too risky, and so he picks the safe route and creates the CGI Kool-Aid movie. And in the story, this means disappointing Scorsese, who we've established in real life is the ultimate cinephile. And in the story, he actually ends up killing Scorsese's swan song project, the final film that he intends to make. It's so on the nose about how, at the top, you really can't prioritise artistry and creativity. You have to prioritise profit, and you're going to disappoint and crush the dreams of your heroes along the way. This is just a quick ad read because I myself am a filmmaker. I have worked with the BBC, with Screen Scotland, with BAFTA, and I'm a BAFTA member. And I've taken all of the experience that I have from those projects and infused it into my tool, the Filmmakers Game Plan, and of course, the Filmmakers Game Plan Ultimate. The tool itself helps you manage your entire production through all of the stages. And the course really digs into how you can access the resources and people and funds that you need to make your film happen. So this is just a quick plug because if you're watching this thinking you would love to be working in a Hollywood studio someday, the best place to start is making your own indie film project. And the Filmmakers Game Plan can help you do that. Every episode of the show embroils the characters in chaos, and that's because filmmaking is insane. Everything takes forever, and even if you're doing a 16-hour day and nobody's getting any rest, there still isn't enough time. The second episode of the show exacerbates this with the premise of a oneer. A oneer is the shortened name for a one-shot, so everything in a scene or everything in an episode or a film is shot entirely in one shot. The studio as a show is largely made up of oneers, so entire scenes play out for 15 minutes or so without any cuts. It's just the camera following the action. And in the second episode, the entire episode is a oneer. And it shows exactly what it's like in real time being on set. And what happens when something doesn't go to plan and people are pulled in 1,000 different directions to try and get back on track. Matt wants to be involved in the film, and so he makes a note to the director, and the director feels that they can't ignore this because Matt is the exec producer, so we've got to incorporate what he says. It comes from a very well-intentioned place, but what happens is Matt derails the entire shoot. Matt suggests that they add a prop into the scene, so then someone has to source that prop, and then they have to talk the actress through blocking the scene whilst holding it. When does she put it down? Can the camera still follow the action now that there's this extra thing happening? They're losing light, and they need to get this shot before the sun goes down, but then how does all of this affect what everyone else is doing? The sound, the extras. There's so many things to take into consideration, and Matt thinks that he's just innocently suggesting that we add a prop into the scene. And he quickly learns that a suggestion like that can completely halt production. Honestly, this is one of the reasons why after uni I didn't like being on set. I loved editing and I went into post-production because of the passion I had for that part of the process, but it was an added bonus that you didn't have to be on set where everything was crazy. I don't mind it now because I feel better equipped for it, but certainly when I was younger, I just couldn't comprehend how chaotic everything was every time I went along to a set. I remember when I was in my early 20s, I was a runner on a really big production. And I had been tasked with getting dinner for everybody, and I'd been asked to make that happen for 7 p.m. So I went around the entire crew and I asked what everybody would like, and I ordered extra food, and I made sure that it was delivered for 7 p.m. However, our production didn't break at 7 p.m. for dinner, so dinner was ready and no one came to eat it. Then, 3 hours later at like 10 p.m, everyone was exhausted and hungry and a bit crabbit, and the dinner had been lying out for 3 hours. Everything was cold and stale and really unappetizing. In hindsight, they should have just hired an actual caterer for this event because it was a really big crew. And I know now going into productions how to foresee that, how to make sure that you don't miss the slot when the food is ready, or you don't organise food that can only be eaten at a certain time. And I would never put a runner in that position now, but it is exactly as the studio suggests. As soon as one thing doesn't go correct, it has this ripple effect, and suddenly you're derailed by hours, and then something that was prepared earlier on is no longer useful to you, and the budget for all the food is gone, and everyone's really upset. In the studio, they also show the kind of last-minute nature of presentations and pitches. And this is also really accurate. Everyone parties all night long when they have something really important the next morning. In the last episode of the studio, the team are presenting at CinemaCon, which is a real event, but of course the show recreates a fictionalised version of it. And the night before, they actually plan to get high on mushrooms. And it's constantly brought up that this is how old Hollywood would party, and so in Matt's eyes, it's kind of a tradition. And I'm not gonna lie, the recent Cannes Film Festival that I went to had me feeling like a granny. I was home and in bed before midnight every night. I just can't stay out all night and party and wake up and be my best self ready to go present. But it's what people do. They go to parties, they dance with people, and then they see those people later on the street and they're like, it's you! And then they get to know each other and they build rapport, and it all kind of makes sense. It's like a very sloppy version of networking. For me, it's just too much. I'm a bit of a lightweight when it comes to alcohol, and I really cannot handle not getting a good night's sleep. But this is totally standard for the industry, and so the episode where everything goes wrong the night before CinemaCon was definitely very real. In episode 8, Matt and his team are at the Golden Globes, which they entirely recreated for this episode. Matt is anxious that he won't be included in Zoe Kravitz's acceptance speech if she wins, and he feels that as an exec producer, the whole project happened because of him, so he should get a thanks. This is real. On the production where I was the runner that messed up dinner, I didn't get a credit, and it wasn't because of dinner, it was because I wasn't seen as important enough to be credited, even though I was there the entire day, the same as the rest of the crew, and I did more than get dinner. I also helped the camera team, and I made things happen on the day that if I wasn't there would have taken longer. There are also several projects where I've done multiple roles, but you only get credited for one. So a lot of work that I've done has just gone completely unnoticed. For the last few years, I've been working on online content, which basically has no credits. So you're just a ghost crew member. In fact, on a project that I was on for a very long time, the presenter would say that he had just edited the episode when he hadn't. It was me. But he wanted to create the illusion that he was doing everything, and so my contribution was just completely non-existent. So there are a lot of ways in which people don't get the credit for the work they've done. And to be honest, sometimes it's the only way that you can actually prove you've done the work, especially as someone who was behind the scenes. It's not like you're on camera, it's not like you can prove that you were there doing your job. The credit is the only way that someone can verify unless they were to call up people in the production and say, did Ashley edit this? And so it can be really disrespectful when people don't give you credit. In the show, however, Matt would actually have a physical credit on the film that he wanted to be thanked for. The thing is that nobody watches or reads the information in the credits. A lot of people stay to see if there's a scene after, but it's not like they are watching the names go by and taking in the information about who made the film. So for him, he sees Zoe Kravitz acknowledging him in her acceptance speech as the only way that the world will ever know that he had something to do with this film. And also the only way that there will ever be an acknowledgement of his devotion to cinema. In the show, Matt has given up on things like having a regular relationship, starting a family, or even having an artistic career himself. And no one outside of the other people in the industry that are in the same boat understand who he is or what he's done. I enjoyed the studio even though the lows of it hit close to home. It simultaneously celebrates and roasts the film industry, portraying how difficult it is to succeed. What do you think? Did it resonate with you, or did it open your eyes to how insane the film industry is? Let me know in the comments. And if you're an aspiring filmmaker who would love to rise to the levels of the studio one day, you should start out by creating your own indie film project. Whether it's a short or a feature, there is loads of advice on this channel on how to get your filmmaking project going. I also host a free webinar that shows you how to kickstart your project. And I also have a tool and a course that takes it to the next level. If you want to check those out, I'll put the links in the comments below.